Welcome home to Homespun, a weekly internet gathering of family, friends, and businesses from Platte County. Our purpose is to connect our community and showcase the colorful threads that run through our tapestry. Grab a warm cup of hometown goodness, sit back, put your feet up, and visit with us a while. I'm your host, Mark DeLapp, and I bring to you portions of interviews from some of our own. Welcome home, Platte County, to Homespun. We want to welcome you to Homespun today, the weekly web-based television program that is put out for the people of Platte County. And today we are just honored to have two, what we call in journalism jargon, a power couple, political power couple, but we're not going to talk about politics today. We're going to kind of get to know this couple today. My story idea was what it's like to be married in politics without really getting into platforms or political agendas or debates or things like that. We've got enough of that going on right now in town. So let me start with you, Lynn. And where are you from, and how did you get here?
Oh, I have a good story. I think God had to go to a lot of work to get me to Wyoming and to get me to Platte County. I grew up in Brookville, Wisconsin, which is very close to where you grew up, Mark, which
Menominee
is really
Falls.
Cool. And
We both went to East High School. You went to Brookfield East. I went to Menominee Falls East.
Right.
It's like I said, we've probably sat across a gym from each other on competing teams because we were both part of the Braveland Conference. Yeah. And I was on the tennis team there and basketball team there and football team there. And so, we grew up in the same proximity. We even went to the same church.
Yeah.
So, but I didn't know you until this week when I took a picture of you and your granddaughter, right? Your granddaughter?
Yeah, our granddaughter.
At the Platte County Fair.
Right.
And I didn't know you from Eve, but it was a good photo op for me. So continue.
Okay. Then I came to Wyoming in 1986 with my first husband. He came to pastor Calvary Baptist Church in Cheyenne, and then a couple of years later got a brain tumor. We had just had our third son, and my husband died 11 months after the brain tumor in 1991. And so I can remember, though, I want to just tell you this because I can remember one time he and I driving up I-25 going to some church conference up in Casper, and I looked on the overpass looking down on Chugwater, and I said, who would live there? So I've always thought God had a sense of humor, because then Dan's wife Pam also had died of breast cancer, and we met and we married and we raised our 5 kids here. We've been married 27 years now. Mm-hmm. So I have 3 boys, and Dan had 2 girls. So we blended our family, and our kids grew up in the Platte County schools in Chugwater, and our youngest son finished high school in Wheatland. So we're longtime Platte County residents, and Dan even longer than me.
Now, Lynn, when you were growing up in Wisconsin, obviously you probably don't have it out on a ledge here, but you've obviously got a cheesehead somewhere here hidden in the house.
I do.
Which all of it, by law, we have to have it
Yes.
on us at all times. And I don't know about you, but I was raised on Pabst, Polkas, and the Packers, not necessarily in that order. And learned how to polka in my grandparents' living room in Milwaukee. And my grandmother used to live right near Mount Mary College down there. So for you growing up in Wisconsin, Brookfield, as I said, it was kind of the elite community.
Oh no, Elton Grove was more elite than Brookfield.
Well, yeah,
that's true. Right?
But in our Braveland conference, it was you guys in Brookfield Central. Well, Nicolay too. Nicolay was one of those iconic communities. And we would get spanked every time we play them in tennis. And I mean, they were just like, they had tennis gods there. So what was it like growing up in Brookfield, Wisconsin?
You know, I grew up in West Dallas till I lived in West Dallas, Wisconsin, which is a little humble blue-collar community, till I was 10. Then we moved, and we lived on an acre of land, which was a lot of land there. And my dad was a stickler for the yard, and I can remember raking leaves and picking apples and just having room to grow up, and I love that. I had a great big pine tree outside of my window, and I can remember always in the morning, in the summers, hearing the mourning doves. I had a great childhood. I was adopted by my parents when I was 8 months old, and but just had one brother, adopted brother, and it was good. But I was, just the circumstances of events. My parents moved after I graduated from high school, so I never really went back and related much to Brookfield after high school graduation.
Sure. But we know, growing up in Wisconsin, that was a great time. I had an uncle that owned a bar up in De Pere, Wisconsin, so we would go and they would have venison feeds for the Packers in the 60s. So growing up in Wisconsin especially
Friday night fish fries, don't forget.
Friday night fish fries at Aliota's.
Yeah.
With the slaw,
Yeah.
it was just unheard of. And then the fish boils all the way up the shore. It was good.
Yeah.
And my grandfather, who was like Ernest Hemingway, he's in the Freshwater Fishing Hall of Fame now today, up in Hayward, Wisconsin, because he would tie flies by the stream and then find out what they were eating, and he would go into the stream and of course pull out some pretty monster trout out of the Embarrass River up there in Wisconsin. So. Wisconsin was a great place to grow up as a kid, like I said, especially if you were a little boy, because we had the Packers, we had the Milwaukee Bucks won a championship in 1971.
Don't forget the Brewers.
And then, but I watched Hank Aaron hit home runs out of County Stadium.
Yeah.
My dad had season tickets for the Braves game, and so we used to go watch Hank Aaron and Eddie Matthews, and they broke our hearts when they left. And of course, unfortunately, some of us became Cubs fans after that, but. So you grew up and you went to Wisconsin Rapids, and what was it like?
I never really lived in Wisconsin Rapids.
Okay.
My brother broke his neck in a diving accident the first day of school when he had just transferred as a sophomore, and I was at the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire, which is where you also went. You just told me that. This is so crazy. But he was and that just kind of changed my whole world, and in so many different ways. But I only went to the university for a year, and then I ended up going to Moody Bible Institute, and then graduated from Trinity College down in Deerfield, Illinois, with my bachelor's in psychology. So I didn't really live in Rapids, but I do remember a lot of wonderful things about Wisconsin.
Yeah, it's interesting. Both Eau Claire. I have my undergrad degree from Eau Claire. I have my MBA from Trinity.
Really?
It's just fun to see how
Yeah.
things have transpired. And Dan, where did you grow up at?
I grew up about 40 miles southeast of here, out in the middle of nowhere, but I went to high school at Albin, which would be a little
Just
community
like
comparable to Chugwater and
yeah.
Lindo.
Okay.
And my family's ranched there since the 19th century, and didn't have many neighbors, but had a great growing up. Had 10 people in my class when we graduated, and a wonderful life. 2 brothers and great parents.
Albin College.
No,
Albin High School.
Albin High School,
Yeah, excuse
yes.
me.
Yeah.
And I've never even heard of that, but that's not rare because there's a lot of towns here in Wyoming that I'm still trying to get.
Well, and the high school closed in about 2005.
Okay, all right. I was just talking with a couple yesterday whose roots were in Sunrise and in the mining community, and how that school fell by the wayside there and was torn down too, and it kind of disseminated. But did you go on to college then at all, Dan?
Yes, I did. I went to the University of Wyoming and graduated with a journalism degree.
So you're a journalism degree major too?
You bet, yeah.
I got a lot in common with you guys. I don't know. And so when you graduated from the University of Wyoming in journalism, what did you do with that?
Actually, I've never worked full-time in the journalism field, though I did some part-time jobs with Laramie Boomerang and the Wyoming Farm Bureau Federation. But my first main job for the first 6 years out of college was with InterVarsity Christian Fellowship, which was a campus ministry to college students.
Sure.
And I lived in Cheyenne and Laramie and worked with the university students and some of the junior college students in the area.
And then you went to seminary.
Then I went to a year of seminary, and then that was good. But in the middle of that, I decided, I'd like to go home and work with my dad and be on the ranch. So I came back.
And living the dream out here in Wyoming.
It's been really nice because there was a lot of other interests besides just ranching. I was interested in politics and the church and coaching and writing and radio a little bit, and I got to dabble in all those other things in addition to making a good living here.
Sure.
Raising cattle.
Just doing what you love to do.
Good stuff, yeah.
Yeah, that's what people say that about me. They say, well, you write and you take pictures and you're a musician and all this other stuff. But we all came from that old school that said, if you want to try something, try it.
Yeah.
And if you're a failure at it, it's better to be a failure at something you love than a success at something you hate.
Yeah.
And so you've been ranching now for how many years, Dan?
Since 1982.
1982. And tell me a little bit about your story of your first wife, where you met, and kind of lead up to that fateful diagnosis.
Yes. I was in second grade and she was in first. Yeah. I have very tender feelings about her and what happened to her. But we were married 17 years, had 2 little girls, and she was a wonderful woman, a teacher, and just a strong Christian, wonderful lady. And had a breast cancer diagnosis and a very difficult 40-month journey until she finally died in December 91.
When you guys you were sailing along, how many kids did you have, Dan?
We had the 2 girls.
2 girls.
Yeah.
And how old are they now?
They're 38 and 35, I think.
And what are their names?
Hannah and Abby.
Hannah and Abby.
Yeah.
How old were they when your first wife?
They
passed?
were 6 and 9.
So they were relatively young.
Yes,
so
they were.
That had to impact their lives greatly.
Mm-hmm. It did.
But God in His infinite wisdom brings somebody else in to kind of pick up the slack.
Yeah.
And so that's what happened in your case.
We always said this marriage was as good as what happened was bad with our first spouses. So
Sure.
It's hard to fathom all that has gone on there, but it's
Right.
And all that God had to do to bring me here.
yeah, it's been
Yeah,
a
like it was a lot.
wonderful partnership we have. So
Well, that's incredible. So when you were farming and ranching and kind of doing a lot of different things, wearing a lot of different hats, what was your greatest joy about ranching? And why did you really want to do it? Was it because the love your dad had for it?
I've always enjoyed animals. I enjoy the space, being your own boss, taking a lot of satisfaction in the things I've built. And I'm not, compared to a lot of guys, I'm not a big craftsman, but
But he's an inventor.
But I'm an inventor. There are a lot of outlets for creativity. Chance to work with my family, the outdoors, again.
You and
just a nice
and
life.
your dad were really
Yeah,
close.
we had a
and so
good years together.
They did a lot together because Dan was up here in the ranch alone, so his dad would
He'd
come
come
out
out
and
and
help.
help, yeah.
Sure, sure.
He was a great guy.
Well, so you like being outside, you like being with the animals. What actually got you into politics?
I'm kind of...
And when did you get into politics?
I'm a generalist, so I
Okay.
have broad interests. My family traveled when I was a child. We've traveled with our family. Just interested in the world, and I always thought I'd run for school board sometime. I thought that was really important, but I didn't. I decided to run for the commissioner position in 2002.
After you did leadership.
Yeah, I'd done leadership, Platte County, and got prepared and ended up Wyoming Writers President, and done stuff like that. But I always thought good people needed to run for those positions and make decisions. I mean, somebody's going to make that decision. Why not me? Somebody that's interested and concerned for the community and the county and the people, and kind of aware of what's going on in the world. So it's made a wonderful complement to the ranch life.
Sure.
To have the ranch life isolated, many days working by myself, to have something social and where we can impact people in different ways, that's meant a lot to me.
He's really bright, and it's good to have something else to be thinking about, and some great way to use his mind and his brain,
Sure.
As another outlet.
I think I find, growing up in Wisconsin and then working in a lot of rural communities as well as a lot of urban settings, but some farmers come up with some of the greatest ideas and greatest inventions ever.
Oh boy, there's
You know
some sharp
why?
farmers.
Because you're out on, I know what it's like to sit there hour after hour on a tractor, or I'm in the days of the square bales. So that was the worst job. The best line that I've ever heard was last bale during a hot summer day, But you get a lot of time by yourself. You get a lot of time to think, a lot of time to meditate, a lot of time to ponder, a lot of time to pray. Your job here on the ranch, what are some of the things that you do that kind of isolate you like that get you alone to think?
We feed cattle every day in the winter from about Thanksgiving till the middle of April. And now my son has come back to kind of transition into my position. But for years it was just me. So you'd have that time, you'd have the time when you're fencing, the time in the summer when you're out checking windmills and the cattle, which is what I was doing earlier today before you got here.
He could pontificate to the cattle
Yeah,
off the back of the
they were
truck.
always a good audience. A lot of my inventions had to do with helping create a job that one man could do. Because for the most part, I was by myself day after day. And my wife would tell you, I'm not very good at asking for help. And with my other ranch partners 40 miles away, I took a lot of satisfaction just in all those things that we could do and come up with ways to lift this and so forth.
Now, Lynn talked about pontification with the cows. I remember my grandfather used to say, this raising these cows, he said, will give you a real good background. He said, whether you want to go to be a writer or a musician or whatever you want to be, or even a pastor. He told me that, even a pastor. Mm-hmm. He said, because you learn something from these cows. That if you've got enough food and the food is good, they'll follow you wherever you go. Mm-hmm. and I think that's so true. Yeah. And maybe that led to your stint in the ministry and your walk with God. I think that's very, there's something powerful about a farmer, something farmer oriented, that something clean about it, where you just walk in that area of nature every day, mm-hmm. and you're spending a lot of time with yourself. You learn a lot about mm-hmm. yourself, don't you, Dan, when you're in this?
Yeah, you do. I've always tried to give my best every day, even for all the things that just God and I knew about, And so at the end of the day, you had a good feeling of having met whatever challenge was before you, and you gave it your best. And try to do it with excellence, even though nobody knew about it.
Right. I know from doing a little bit of homework on you that you're a hard driver, that you don't like to ask for help in certain areas. So, you've lived a pretty healthy life, even though you had to go through a stint where you had a wife that suffered for 40 months before she finally passed. But when you get sick out there during the week and you're the only one out there feeding the cows and you're the only one that has to mend the fences, what do?
I've been amazingly healthy.
Yeah.
And I think, which I would attribute to being out, doing that work and having the germs blown away, I guess, and been fortunate to have avoided injuries over the years.
Sure.
It's been a helpful life. I do have some people I can call in my family, but really very little downtime from that kind of thing over the years.
Yeah. Now, I always like to come into the situation. Now, Lynn, you had a situation also where you had your husband die and leave you with a 14-month-old. You have how many children together? 5. So you had 2 with a previous marriage, and you had 1 with 3 with a previous marriage. 3 boys. Okay, mm-hmm. All right, and you had a 14-month-old.
Right.
and next thing you know, he's gone. What is your world like?
He's getting us today.
Getting to us.
Yeah. Well, I had after my first husband and I were married, we lived in Chicago in the city. My husband went to seminary, I went to graduate school and got my master's degree in vocational rehabilitation counseling. We got called to a church, came to Cheyenne, and I loved Wyoming from the get-go. I wanted to be out here, and so I was like, what am I going to do now? Am I going to move back to Chicago? I don't want to take 3 little children by myself there. My parents didn't live where I grew up, and I didn't really want to live there alone with no support. So it just seemed logical for me to stay here. So I stayed here, and I've been fortunate enough to work here. And even after Dan and I got married to work, I have always kind of worked virtually, and I started a program in Wyoming called the Wyoming Business Leadership Network to help businesses to hire people with disabilities. I started the first one in Cheyenne, and now I work for a nonprofit organization called Disability In, and I'm on the national stage of that organization in terms of working with corporations to help them to hire people with disabilities. My position with that organization is to direct the local affiliates, all the boots on the ground people. We have 30 affiliates. We have one in Uinta County still here in Wyoming. And I work with them and try to promote and support them in their endeavors. So I've been fortunate,
When you graduated from Trinity, what was your degree in?
Psychology.
Okay, so you really haven't used that other than the fact that you really are using it because you're dealing with people a lot.
Yeah, and I'm in the helping professions.
Sure.
In rehabilitation counseling.
Almost like social work?
It was impacted by my brother because of his injury.
Yeah.
And people said, oh, there's nothing he can do. He's got to go to college. He's got to do this. He's got to do that. And he had a very significant disability. And so he was my inspiration to say, hey, my brother was never a college-bound guy, but was always able to work and had a lot to contribute, was really good with mechanics, very good inventor, could sell anything to anybody. And I was like, he can work. So I'm like, let's go, and I believe work is therapy. And I believe, God doesn't make junk. Everybody has dignity, value, and worth. That's been my mantra for my whole professional career. And then it's our job to give people with disabilities an opportunity to win. And so to be able to do that and still work in that position, in that field from Chugwater, Wyoming, has been nothing short of miraculous in my opinion, because who would have thought?
Sure.
Who would have thunk it?
Yeah, especially when you come through a town and say, who would live there? Right. They always ask me, they say, why Wyoming? I remember my daughter called me and she said, Daddy, why are you going to another small town? And I've worked in Chicago and Los Angeles, and I lived in Hoffman Estates as a writer and for a corporation there in Chicago. And I was on 3 chambers, the Schaumburg chamber and the Chicago chamber and Hoffman Estates. And she said, well, why are you going to another small town? And I said, I just feel like I found a home here. I feel like I found a home in Wyoming. And I said, what was your morning like? And she said, I got stuck in that Minneapolis traffic 6.5 hours. They had a 6.5 hour traffic jam. And I think it was a time where they had some people with the protesters blocking roads and things like this. So I said, yeah, I know. I know what you mean. I said, I had a morning like that. I said, it took me almost, 4 minutes to get to work this morning because I got stuck behind a tractor. And she goes, I hate you, Daddy. And I said, yeah. But I said, if I had to do one more 4-hour traffic jam in Chicago, I would have lost it. Between that traffic jam in Chicago and then moving to Los Angeles and being on the 405, which is Pastor Jack Hayford would say that's where God sends backsliders on Friday afternoons, is to the 405. But again, there's just something about living in Wyoming. People here are Wyoming. What I have called them Wyoming friendly. I've created a new term here. We are Wyoming friendly. People helping one another without strings attached. Who does that? Especially during the COVID, everybody has pulled together. Yeah. So you two, speaking of COVID, you get to this point here. How do you guys work together in politics, running an entire ranch? You're on national platforms with the people you help and reach out to. What's it like being a couple working together in politics?
Let me tell a little about what Lynn does that's really been a special opportunity for her. Traditionally there's been a spouses group for the legislative spouses who come to Cheyenne during those times when we're in session.
Men or women.
Men or women, that's right.
We don't have very many men that come, but we have men or women.
And that role has changed because traditionally it was the wife of the Speaker of the House and the wife of the President of the Senate did it for 2 years while their husbands were in those positions. Well, wives work and not as many come anymore. So these last 4 years, the Speaker's wife, who was a school teacher in Casper, was unable to come. So Lynn has taken that over and planned these wonderful events for these group of men and women that are there supporting their spouses during the legislative time. She's also been involved in producing the ladies, what do you call it?
The First Ladies Luncheon?
First Ladies Luncheon, which is kind of a fundraiser for some of the special projects that the governor's wife will undertake. And Lynn, with a lot of help from her team there, has done that. And she also was in charge of the reception for Governor and Mrs. Gordon after they were
the inaugural gala,
the inaugural
which was
ball.
The biggest gala they've ever had really for 1,400 people.
You know, people need to know that that's Platte County doing that.
Yeah.
Those wonderful things that Lynn's participated in and done so well, as my wife and teammate.
I see Platte County too. One of the things I looked at during the fair, and of course Fair Week to me is kind of like Chip Gaines' demo day. I just love Fair Week. And the thing I noticed most was the fact that everybody was free. We weren't hiding behind masks. We were smile. You could see the smiles. I think a society that's covering their faces is very deceptive, first of all, and second of all, it's very depressing. But to see all the smiles at that fair, when the national anthem played, there was not one person that was kneeling. Kids that were standing with their hands upon their hearts. It made me feel proud to be a part of a community that we're true patriots here in America. Yeah. With COVID going on, Dan, how did this affect you guys?
You know, out here it wasn't all that different than life would have been normally. I mean,
we were always social distanced where we live.
My work was just what work would have been in terms of the ranch. Obviously, there's concerns about what's going on in the state, but everybody's kind of holed up at home. We're holed up at home. We went to church online. You know, it was not bad. We made our trips.
Yeah, even the
groceries.
Chugwater Church had church online. Little tiny Chugwater Church had church online.
I mean. We're kind of removed from some of that impact, and of course we wouldn't want to do it forever. And know that there was a difficulty for businesses in our own community, and we're sorry that happened. There's been some efforts, obviously federal money passing down to state to make that right. So we know there was hardship. For us, it was a lot of the days were another day on the range, and then we started watching MASH and Andy Griffith at night.
Just for comic relief.
Just for a little treat. So.
Well, we're all in the same group that watched. That was the first time originally.
Oh,
yes,
yeah,
I know.
So,
just the songs take me back to my childhood.
Sure. How do you guys ever have a bad day? You guys are like always smiling, always kind of positive, always upbeat. You ever have bad days?
Well, yeah, don't we all have bad days? Sometimes we're home and nobody else has to see them.
You get kind of lonely out here sometimes.
I get lonely. Mm-hmm. I'm a very social person, so sometimes I think it's kind of funny that I ended up in such an isolated place. But I do love it too, though. So.
Do you two ever disagree on anything?
Not very much.
We really don't.
We're
it's
good.
We
were a wonderful match. It was just so fortunate to find
we just have very little conflict.
We've had good times.
We just talk. talk it through.
So communication is the key.
Huh?
So communication is the key.
Communication is the key. And just respect for each other. I mean, for me, there's nothing not to respect about him. He's not a harsh person. He's a thinker. He's a thoughtful person. He's a considerate person, and he's easy to live with, really.
I usually ask the question with couples, especially, how did you meet? And I usually ask the woman how you met. And I'm going to switch that up and ask you,
That's
Dan.
okay.
No, this
It's
is
a
an
good
easy one.
Oh, okay.
June 17th, 1992. And we're going to a grief support group in the basement of DePaul Hospital in Cheyenne. And it's the last meeting. It's a potluck, and I haven't gone for a while, but I thought I'd go that night kind of for some closure with the other people in my group. And we're sitting there, me and a year and a half.
And we
before.
kind of knew of each other,
Little
but
bit.
we didn't know each other.
Yeah, yeah.
Like on our prayer chains at churches and stuff, I knew he had lost, and his nephew dated a girl from our church, so I kind of knew
There
him.
was some vague connection.
Yeah.
But anyway, June 17th is Cream Puff Day around our house. And
June 17th
still
is
to
the
this day.
first day that you saw her
Yeah.
and actually laid eyes on her
That's it.
in her purple dress and her cream puffs from Wisconsin.
She swished in.
That's
You
what he
you
said.
gotta love the people from Wisconsin, Dan. I mean,
I know.
He always says, I married a little Wisconsin girl.
exactly.
It's been fun.
So, what was your take on it?
Well, he was sitting there. He had taken a horse down to Fort Collins to sell or do something, and he was sitting there in kind of a grubby shirt and he had like photo grade glasses on, so I couldn't really see him. But we got to talking during the little refreshment time, and I thought, wow, he's really nice. So it was right about to be Father's Day, so I wrote him a little note and I said, it was really nice to meet you. I'm really sorry. I hope Father's Day goes okay. And I had told him that I was taking my boys, and we were going back to Wisconsin and to California. We were at this big trip planned, and he said, so he knew I was going to be gone. And when I came home, I had a 6-page letter in my big pile of mail, and he said, do you want to go on a date? He asked me out. It wasn't, do you want to get together for coffee? It was, do you want to go on a date? And I was absolutely thrilled. So it worked.
Mm-hmm.
See,
really
that's
well.
that's what you get when you get an old school guy. Is you get a guy that courts you.
Yeah.
You don't get a guy that just is nonchalant about things. And I didn't ask you this earlier, Lynn, but what are your boys' names?
Jeremy is our oldest one, who lives here, or
Okay.
lives a quarter mile away down, and is.
Sure.
And then Mitchell, Mick. A lot of people. He played on the Wheatland High School football team, and people would know him as Mick Westerman. And then Charlie, the youngest, who went to Wheatland High School, got a degree in journalism from Washington State University. Aspiring writer, mix of videography and videography, has a.
Podcast.
No, that's Charlie.
Okay.
Charlie has the podcast. Mick has got a
Little video company.
a film production
Film
company. Sorry, I
production.
couldn't get the right words out. And then Jeremy's the rancher.
That's sounds like you've got a well-rounded family here, and
Hannah is a homemaker in Cheyenne, and Abby, Dan's daughter, is a attorney in Denver, and her husband is a photojournalist. You guys would probably like each other. So.
well, it sounds like you guys have a full life, and it sounds like your house probably is just absolutely full around holidays.
It is.
How many grandkids do you have?
We have 5.
5 grandkids.
Yep.
All right, and they keep you pretty busy.
They do.
If
As
you're-
busy as we want to be. Yeah.
If you're like me, you load them with sugar and send them back home, and then you don't get to babysit for a while. It's like my daughter puts me in timeout. Daddy, you're not going to be able to babysit them
I know.
for 2 weeks. So, it has been a pleasure
Yeah.
to meet you guys
Yeah, thanks,
and to
Mark.
Thank
spend
you.
some time here in your home.
Mark, can I say one thing?
Yeah.
One of the other things that I do at the legislature, or I did as a result of being a legislative spouse, was I'm on the board for Jenny Gordon's Hunger and No Hunger Wyoming initiative to help reduce childhood hunger in Wyoming. And if you haven't gone to the website, No Hunger Wyoming, it's really .org. You ought to go check it out. It's helping to feed people, especially during COVID. We just got another $50,000 grant from Blue Cross Blue Shield. People have stepped forward. We've been distributing money. I'm on a grants committee. We help to distribute money and to help to build infrastructure for existing programs. Jenny's not starting anything new. We're trying to bolster existing programs in the community or expand programs in the community that are really specifically targeted to children with childhood hunger. It used to be 1 in 5 kids were food insecure in Wyoming. Now with COVID, it's 1 in 6. So it's a lot of children, and now it's getting to be adults too. So check out nohungerwyoming.org because you can find out what's going on in your community in terms of if you have need.
That's awesome. That's awesome. You guys are the genuine article, and
Thank you.
It speaks volumes, just where you guys came from and how you guys met and how you're pushing ahead. And I know that, Dan, you're preparing for an upcoming election, and as I said, we tend to want to stay away from the politics, just kind of get people to know who you are and people that are in our community. This show Homespun is for the people of Platte County, about the people of Platte County, and I think we're very fortunate here to have you down here in Chugwater. Whether you're in politics or whether you're not in politics, I think we're just blessed to have you guys here. So thank you guys for being on our show today.
Thanks for coming to see us.
All right. Best of luck.